Hey everybody, Erin from the Impatient Gardener, and for a bizarre reason, we're starting a bulb planting video in the kitchen today. It's really weird. I'm planting a type of bulb I've never planted before, but I'm very excited for, and I hope they work out really well because I think they'll be beautiful, but I find them to be so odd. So we are planting Anemone Blanda. So this is hardy down to zone 5. This is also known as Grecian windflower. And the instructions for these start by soaking them overnight, which is why we're in the kitchen, because I have done that already. But I want to show you these odd little, they're tubers technically, they're not bulbs, they're tubers. But I want to show you these odd little things. I mean, they're like, they look to me like little chunks of, well, little chunks of something. But I mean, they are almost like little pieces of coal or something. They're so strange to me. So anyway, I've soaked them each overnight. I have one mix called Blue Shades and one called White Splendor, I think. The white ones are a little knobbier and have like these little, I don't know what those are, calluses on them. These are completely new to me, and I couldn't possibly tell you if one way is supposed to go up or down, and I can't find any suggestion that that's the case, so I'm just going to throw these in the ground. So planting on these is 3 inches deep and 3 to 5 inches apart, although I'll probably plant them a little closer because I want these to become a ground cover. Apparently you can push them into a fair amount of shade, which is what I'm going to do, although in northern climates they say they might do a little bit better in sun. But I'm going to put these underneath the oak tree, actually, so in spring when these come up, there'll be plenty of sun there. Over in the new garden, with hopes that these sort of sweet little flowers will naturalize around. So there we go. Let's go plant something new. Okay, so I'm going to plant most of these around this big oak here, I think. And then there's a pine tree over here, and just kind of spread these out through this part of the garden. So let's see how this goes. So rather than mix up all the blue and the white, I think I'm going to kind of plant them in swaths, but sort of mix some in around. I don't really know what the right thing to do is, but I'm just going to use, because I think it'll be easier, I'm just going to use my this is sort of my flat trowel that can kind of pull a lot of soil all at once. And we're aiming again for 3 inches down. So I think I'll do some blues here. And they say 3 inches down, 3 inches apart. I'll go closer than that because you guys know me, I always do. And then I'm just going to try to work through this sort of as quickly as possible because this time of year nobody's got time for, well, taking time to place each individual bulb absolutely perfectly. So this is where I have all this Carex pennsylvanica planted, and you know, eventually that should sort of fill in here. So over the years this should actually end up being really kind of nice. Now, of course, these bulbs will go dormant. So, you know, it's the same deal like any other bulb where you got to let the foliage die back and move on. Oh, wow. If you drop one, you'll never find it again because they look like little blobs of dirt. So this is another naturalizing bulb. So ideally, you know, someday maybe this whole thing could be covered. Could I be so lucky? It'd be great if that happened. So that was actually really painless. It probably took me 15 minutes, and I think that was 400 bulbs or 450 bulbs, something like that. I just sort of dug trenches, especially when you only need to go 3 inches deep. And then I just kind of tossed them in. So we'll see how that goes. I hope they go well. I'm actually really excited about trying these. It's fun to try new things. And I don't really have any idea what this is going to look like, but I think it could be really cool. Okay, so now for a more traditional bulb, I'm going to be planting some tulips in the vegetable garden. So let me explain to you what's happening over there. Well, it's the next day, and as you can tell, it's just a little windy. It's about 30 degrees colder than it was, and it's not really a great day to be outside planting because my hands are freezing. I don't know how much actual planting I'm going to get done, but I think you guys know by now how to plant most of these things. I'll run through it quickly, but you guys know the general gist of it. You know, it's roughly 2 to 3 times the height of the bulb. Follow the directions on the package. Pointy end goes up, good to go. So in the vegetable garden, this is where I plant tulips. Now, I plant tulips here only in the vegetable garden because it's fenced. If you've tried to grow anything other than the species tulips, you know that deer and rabbits go nuts for them. So I gave up growing tulips a long time ago. And then once we built this vegetable garden, I was so happy to be able to start growing tulips again. And for the past couple of years, I've actually grown them in the 4 raised beds that I reserve for sort of cut flowers in the vegetable garden. Now, last year I ran into some problems because I had these beautiful tulip mixes, and I had some that were just bulb mixes in general, and they were stunning. But many of the really showy bulbs seem to be the later blooming bulbs. And for me, I have such cool springs that late blooming bulbs bloom well into June sometimes, which meant that it really held up my ability to plant cut flowers, especially for the things that I was direct sowing into those beds. So I actually did a video this year where I was essentially trying to like tuck sweet peas in around tulips that were just starting to bloom, and it was kind of a mess. So I'm taking a new approach this year. I have these in-ground beds. There's one right here along each side of the vegetable garden. And I grow an espalier fruit tree on either side. This one's got an apple, the other side has a pear. Last year was the first year for those. I bought those pre-trained. And then I also have some raspberries and some strawberries growing along here. But otherwise, these little side beds. Oh, and I am trying to espalier currants, and it's not been going well. But I do have those along the fence too. That's sort of an ongoing experiment. I haven't talked much about it because so far it's failing. Anyway, so I just thought I would, I think these beds are like 2 feet wide, maybe 2.5 feet wide. And my plan is to just fill these entire edges with tulips. So that way they can do their thing, nothing else is going to get in the way of them, and I get that big show. And I think actually it'll look really cool in here when they're blooming. What I'm doing along the edges is really bright colors. So I worked with Longfield Gardens, and I am getting Brillaint mix, which is sort of yellows, oranges, fuchsias, really bright, warm, maybe even like jewel tone type colors. And then I'm adding to that some Monte orange, which is a double orange, and some Continental, which is a dark purple, not quite Queen of Night dark, but pretty close. And I'm going to just mix those all in, and we're going to plant these whole edges with that bright mix. So I'm going to be doing 260 bulbs on each side. And what I'm going to do today is sort of space them out, because I think the way that I'm going to plant these is I'm actually going to dig trenches, because I think that's going to be, for something like this, I want these to be pretty intensively planted. And I think for something like this, that's going to go faster than drilling a hole with the auger for every single tulip bulb, except for the places where I have to work around the strawberries, which are mostly underneath the espalier trees. There I will hand dig or use an auger. So what I'm going to do is just measure this out so I can roughly figure out, you know, each segment takes X number of bulbs, so I can make sure that I space them right so I don't end up with all the bulbs on one side and nothing down on the end. So that is going to be along here. All of these bloom mostly mid-season. Monte orange is a touch early, and actually I'm okay with that because Monte orange is really showy. Hopefully they overlap, but Monte orange will give a really nice big show to kind of start things off, and then the rest will come in. And everything's done by mid-season then. I purposely picked varieties that bloomed early or mid. I did not want to get into late season because I just don't want to look, just don't want to look at tulips in June. I want to look at all the other things in June. Plus, I don't know what else might be going on here. I always change up my mind. So that will hopefully just give a really cool display along the edges. So that is along the two sides. Now let me take you back by the Belgian fence and we'll talk about what we're doing down there. Okay, so I don't know how much of the Belgian fence you can see behind me. You probably see the framework more than you see the Belgian fence, but I did a couple of videos on that this year, and I'll put links to that in the description so you can see how I created it. But I've been really happy with how it went this year. So if we can just keep everything really happy this winter, get through the winter with everything doing well, no rabbits getting in here and chewing on anything, hopefully it'll really take off next year. So now there's that same bed width here along the back, except for of course where the back door is, which if you see that board underneath there right now, that's there because the door is too high. And so I just have a board there blocking that off so no rabbits think they're gonna come in here that way. I need to raise the stones up that are underneath there, and I was planning on making that a fall project, but every day it gets cold like this, I start thinking that's more of a spring project. So what I'm gonna do in the back here is I decided that since these, and I always intended to plant something else in front of the Belgian fence, and I think this year I'm going to do white back here because so this is Royal Raindrops crabapple here, has pink flowers and this beautiful dark purple foliage, and I thought whites would look really pretty with that. So I'm going to do whites and pinks back here, and I'm going to carry that theme on throughout the year. So for tulips, I picked two types. Now the ones for back here all bloom early because I intend to plant annuals in behind that. So I wanted those done and dusted so that there was no problem getting flowers in here when I wanted to. So back here I am doing two types of white, a single early white called White Emperor, and then a double early white called Exotic Emperor, and I will just mix those two up. And then I'm actually going to polka dot in some pink tulips. I love a pink tulip. It's kind of almost like a watermelon-y pink, and it's called Tortonto. And what I think I'm gonna do is, so we'll have all the white tulips, and then I think I'll do a cluster of maybe 3 pink tulips in little groups, kind of polka dotted throughout that. These things all make sense in my head. Time only tells if this actually turns out the way I'm envisioning it. But I think it's gonna be sort of subtle, but with that little spark of pink in there. And then we'll talk at some point about the plan for annuals in here, but I'm thinking of a low-growing white cosmos maybe, with maybe like a flare of little pink, and continue that little hints of pink popping up through there. But I got time. That's what winter's for, is to figure that out. The tulips are what we're working on now. So now I'm just gonna go through and show you how I'm marking off the sides so that I just make sure I have things spaced. I'm not too worried about these back beds. It shouldn't be that hard to space out, what is it, 80 tulips? 80 tulips on each side. I think I can kind of figure that out without actually measuring that out, but I am gonna do the sides. Okay, so I brought out my handy dandy marking flags. Again, what I do without those? Anyway, so what I did was I divided it into 5 sections. It's about 42 feet to where I wanna stop. So roughly 8.5 foot sections here. Well, 8 and a little. So I brought out my handy dandy marking flag. So I brought out my handy dandy marking flags again. What did I do without those things? It's roughly 42.5, 43 feet more or less, which is more or less is fine in my world. To where I want to stop. So I divided it by 5. I'll do this in 5 different sections. And basically I measured out just over 8 feet per section. And I don't know that I'll be able to get as many bulbs in the areas where the tree is, but I'm going to just keep them even. And I can always, if I have extras there, I can spread them out throughout the other sections when I'm done. Now, interestingly enough, I thought I had bought enough bulbs to really, like, this was going to be like super jammed in. It's actually not, which is probably better. The bulbs will have room to be spaced out. But really, I actually have roughly 6 bulbs per foot, which is, I think, about average for, gosh, I hope you guys can hear me because it's so windy. Which is actually like normal tulip spacing, I think. So there's really nothing super intensely planted going on here, but it should still make for a really nice display. And frankly, it's okay if I don't have a billion to put in the ground. So there's gonna be roughly 50 bulbs in each section. So 8 feet, 50 bulbs, we'll put them in that way. So that's how I'm hopefully gonna space this out. And then we're just gonna cross our fingers. I hope this display works out as well as I think it could, because I think this could be really cool. I'm already imagining the drone shots in spring. Okay, so I actually wasn't gonna plant any tulips. And then I decided I kind of have to, and I'm really excited about this back area. So we're starting here. I won't get too far, but I just want to show you. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna use the ball auger. I think, because I only have 80 tulips per side to do over here, that's pretty quick to whip those out. So I have thrown in this box, I just use the good old shipping box here. I have thrown in the white emperors and the exotic emperors so that those are nicely mixed up and random. I find that I cannot do a random pattern myself, so it's better for me to mix things up rather than try to place them, except I have left out the bag of the pink ones, which is the Tortonto. And those I will put in specific spots. So I'm just gonna whip through and try to get those in there. Okay, that was actually embarrassingly easy. I had no idea that soil was going to be so fluffy underneath there. So chalk that one up to adding a layer of compost and then a nice layer of wood mulch a year ago, which has all broken down. It's nice, fluffy, light soil. Basically what I did with the auger wasn't so much as drill individual holes, but it was more of a just sort of stirring up the soil so I could just push them in wherever. So that was good to get a start on that. I feel good about that. I am gonna wait to plant the big sides because it's very cold. I can barely move my mouth. I just want to sort of show you how I'm spacing this, how I'm planting this, and a little bit about thinking a little bit creatively about where you plant bulbs and what bulbs you plant in different places. A vegetable garden isn't necessarily the first place you think about planting bulbs. But obviously it can work, and for me it's a place I can plant a bulb that I never would have been able to plant otherwise. So that is exciting to me. So I do have a ton of other videos that I've done on bulb planting, how to use a bulb auger. There is a right way. Reverse can be your friend. Don't force it and don't break your wrist. And other ways to plant bulbs. So I'll put links to all those in the description. I didn't want to get too repetitive about the how-tos of it. Oh, and one last thing I just want to say, which is that a lot of people ask me about bulb fertilizer. So I don't use bulb fertilizer when I plant new bulbs. Bulbs have everything they need in them to get growing. They don't need fertilizer. Now, does it hurt? Absolutely not. Can it help them set up roots? Probably, but where it really comes in handy is the second year. So if once your bulbs are finished blooming, if you hit them with fertilizer then, so that you feed those bulbs then, that will help you have a better show the next year. So part of it is a time-saving thing for me. Part of it is a money-saving thing, to just save that bulb tone application or bone meal, whatever you might want to use as your bulb fertilizer. Save that for the second year to help hopefully have a better show the next year. Because really bulbs, the beauty of a bulb is that it's all in there. It's all you really need is right in that little weird-looking knobby thing. So that's where I stand on fertilizers. There's nothing wrong with it. If you like it and you want to do it, go for it. Personally, I don't feel that I need to do it the first year. Just one of those things where it's sort of up to you as a gardener how you want to handle it. Okay, it is so windy. I'm afraid the camera's actually going to blow down. So I'm going to call this a wrap for today. Hope you found it interesting. Let me know if you're planting any different bulbs this year. I love hearing about it in the comments. You guys have the best comments. And let me know if you've ever planted those anemones before, because those are crazy little things. All right, have a great day in your garden. We'll see you soon. Bye.